It's wonderful to be with the Rotary Club, an organization that is devoted to building stronger communities around the world. And as we heard earlier, you're out planting 600 trees over the weekend. I can't think of anything greater than giving back to your community and helping the environment. So I was asked to talk today about baseball banking and the TransPacific partnership. And I am happy to tell you a little bit about my experiences. And what audience doesn't want to hear about sports and money and probably a little bit more about sports. But I've been extremely fortunate to have had a very diverse career that has taken me from the baseball diamond to the trading floor and to settle here in Middle Earth. But as unique as my path has been, I've learned some universal lessons along the way, which I think will resonate with most of you. As some of you know, sports have played a very important role in my life as a former professional athlete, and more importantly, in the life of my country and, of course, in the daily life of our wonderful host country. So while traveling all around New Zealand, Nancy and I have enjoyed your wonderful hospitality, and we've met everyone from ministers to mayors, entrepreneurs to engineers, and we've talked about everything imaginable. And inevitably, I'm asked about the lessons that I have learned from my time playing baseball. And that these lessons resonate with people across the spectrum because the lessons of sports are essentially the lessons of life in business and in diplomacy. I learned as a very young man the importance of always being prepared for what life might throw your way. Every at-bat of every inning of every game counts. And you never know when the next play could be the one to change the game or potentially even change your life. So I had the opportunity to play against greats like Cal Ripken and George Brett, and I was on the same team with Hall of Famers Tom Seaver and Carlton Fisk. And what I learned is that we can all be much stronger when we work together as a team, because there is nothing as satisfying or successful or makes you successful as good teamwork. And the benefits of cooperation are contagious, making each individual player stronger as we all work together. And these lessons from sports aren't only applicable to the players. We've seen how teams can bring communities together, even entire nations, like during the amazing run of the Black Caps during the Cricket World Cup. Or when I was in Samoa 2 weeks ago to see the pride of the Samoan people after Manu's valiant effort against the All Blacks. Or our miracle on ice when our Olympic hockey team beat the unbeatable Soviets in the 1980 Winter Olympics that truly brought our entire nation together. And what I quickly learned is that the reality that all diplomacy is about celebrating what unites us rather than what divides us. I often say when President Obama asked me to serve in New Zealand, he joked that it was because Kiwis are just as crazy about sports as I am. But he also thought with my business background, I could help grow the trade and investment between the United States and New Zealand, which is one of his main priorities. On retiring from baseball, my second career was in banking. And this is when I really honed my second language skills that have come in handy over the years. So as you can tell, I speak English and I also speak numbers. So let me give you a couple quick stats. The U.S.-New Zealand trade relationship is really doing incredibly well and it's growing. And for the first time last year, we passed $15 billion in two-way trade and services. And that's up from just $3.5 billion 6 years ago. Much of the trade is in dairy and beef, but an increasing amount is in high-tech, high-value areas, such as aeronautics, medical equipment, ICT, and areas of the economy that I call value-added. I had an opportunity about a month ago to create a day that I called Innovation Day, where I went to different incubator startups around town and then invited about 60 of your young entrepreneurs over to the house for a session. And what I can tell you from seeing that is that Wellington and New Zealand have a great future ahead of you. You have such talented, smart young people who are coming up. And when I look at it, what we can do together, I also know that the United States has already invested a lot of money into New Zealand, where we've put in $7.5 billion in foreign direct investment. So we literally have a lot invested in New Zealand itself. But we cannot take these trade figures for granted, or that the United States is the natural choice for Kiwi exporters. And like Air New Zealand says, we know that you have a choice. Kiwi companies have options in when, where, and how they invest and develop markets overseas. I've learned that there's always room for improvement in our two-way trade and our investment promotion. So how do we help find partners outside the traditional stomping grounds of California or New York? And I think we do it with programs like Select USA. It's a Department of Commerce program that works for investors, but also works for the United States, the regions, the cities, matchmaking and helping with bank accounts and tax incentives, supply chain identification, the nitty-gritty of running a business. Excuse me. I went to the Select USA Summit that we held in Washington earlier this year with 5 New Zealand companies. And the opportunities that they saw there were truly amazing. And all 5 of them have secured deals in the United States. The Select USA conference had 2,600 people from more than 80 countries around the world participate. And it's about foreign direct investment into the US, but what I would like to see is more two-way foreign direct investment going both ways between the US and New Zealand. And one way the United States can continue to unlock our export potential is through trade agreements, because we realize that 95% of our potential customers live outside of the United States. And that brings me to the TransPacific Partnership, a high standards 21st century agreement that we are working to conclude very shortly. What we do know about TPP is it will go a long way towards the opening up of new options for both Kiwi and American companies. It will give Kiwis the opportunity to invest in all of North America with 476 million potential customers. And it'll be a vital pillar of the rules-based order in the Asia-Pacific region, where accepted rules create a level playing field for all signatories, whether big or small. Whether you're Brunei with a GDP of $16 billion, the world's 113th largest, or the United States with a GDP of $18 trillion. Over the last 6.5 years, President Obama has focused on the Asia-Pacific rebalance, and the United States has greatly stepped up our engagement in the region. In partnership with like-minded countries like New Zealand, we're helping to maintain an open, prosperous region where robust security relations, strong alliances have played a very critical role. And so have the increasingly important regional institutions like the East Asia Summit, APEC, the Pacific Island Forums, and other groups. The President is focusing on this region because history, demographics, and trade statistics are clear and very compelling. What happens in the Asia-Pacific region will be increasingly important, not only to the United States, but also to the world. So we're investing diplomatically, economically, strategically in this region and in our own future. The United States and New Zealand share a fundamental commitment to a number of core principles within a region. A just international order that emphasizes rights and responsibilities of all nations. The rule of law, freedom of navigation, and open access to the shared domains of the sea, and the resolution of disputes without coercion for countries big and small. So as you can probably tell, reflecting on where I've been in my career, it always makes me optimistic about where we are going in the terms of bilateral trade, security, and cultural exchanges. One thing that is apparent from my first 6 months here is the tangible growth in all aspects of the U.S.-New Zealand partnership. Our two governments have long shared common values and cooperated on a wide range of fronts. Recently, our interaction has increased greatly. Opinions are regularly shared at the highest levels of government, and we have open and honest discussion on a broad range of topics. Direct personal links in government, business, academia, and personal friendships remain fundamental to our strong relationship and are quite possibly the strongest ingredient in this phenomenal growth in our relationship. A perfect example of this strong relationship between our two countries was last month when we had the United States-New Zealand Partnership Forum in Auckland. The forum brought together representatives from business, government, academia, and the military to look at lessons from the great things that we have already accomplished together, and also to see how our futures developing between our two great nations and in tandem with the great Asia-Pacific region developing all around us. The forum is a biennial event known for bringing together high-level delegates who can truly influence decision-making, and this year was no exception. Assistant Secretary of State for East Asia and the Pacific, Danny Russell, spoke, together with Foreign Minister McCulley, about how our views of this region are aligned and where we can cooperate together more fully. And the timing could not have been better. Politically, right now, New Zealand holds the presidency of the United Nations Security Council. Economically, we're working to finish the TransPacific Partnership Agreement. And in terms of the next generation, there are positive trends in the level, and the number of the direct personal links I spoke of earlier between our young travelers, our innovators, our entrepreneurs, and scholars. As Pacific partners, we're part of a region with unlimited potential. Together with our great nation, we can inspire the world with our cooperation, our innovation, and our leadership. Thank you, and I'd be happy to take a few questions.
We've got about 5 minutes for questions, so anyone like to?
First of all, when you have 12 nations negotiating a deal, and this is an agreement that has 31 different chapters. There are environmental chapters, which I understand from the environmentalists that they would be pleased if it was just an environmental deal. Workers' rights, human rights, tens of thousands of lines of things that needed to be worked on. When you're trying to put together a deal like that, the negotiators have to be able to go back and forth and work out the issues individually. So we know the big picture ideals and goals of the agreement, but we don't know the individual lines. That's why once the negotiators sign off on it and all of the head of states sign off on it, it will go to each of the countries to go through their legislative process. I understand that your parliament will take a look at it. Our Congress, by law, has 60 days to review it. So they will have hearings, discussions, experts will come and present. But I do understand why negotiations, just like any deal, just can't completely be out in the public, because you couldn't have people, trying to pick apart the wording of 31 different chapters with tens of thousands of different lines. What I will tell you, though, is that you have a really excellent trade negotiator in Tim Grosser. Mike Froman, who does our work, I think is also terrific. And as I said, all 12 nations have worked really hard on getting this deal across the finish line. And I think we're all anxious to read all of the details, the intimate parts of each of the chapters. Right. The rules that will be a part of this have a chapter based on settlement disputes. What I can tell you is that in other organizations, there are settlement disputes. Where the United States, a case has been brought against the United States. There are also cases that have been brought against New Zealand. Neither New Zealand nor the United States has ever lost one of those in any of the trade organizations. So this is not something where people are just going to be, shooting at, different rules, different regulations. It's put in there in case state-owned enterprises or do things that would be unfair, to businesses, to organizations, to different countries. And so far in none of the trade agreements has New Zealand nor the United States ever lost one of those cases. but it is in there so that everybody's trading on a fair playing field. So the idea is for all 12 nations to agree on what the rules of the road are, and as long as they agree to those rules, then there shouldn't be any problem. One other thing I will mention is that the deal is being done with these 12 countries, but there are already a number of countries who've already said, as soon as you're open to take more people, we want to be a part of this. Everybody understands that this is going to be a very high standards deal. It's going to raise the level of human rights, workers' rights, but it's also going to set really the road of trade, for the future. And I think that's why so many countries want to be a part of it. Most of those programs we've continued, and we've actually created even more. We are sending 2 young entrepreneurs from New Zealand to the Global Entrepreneurship Summit in Nairobi, Kenya, which is the 25th and 26th, so in 5 and 6 days that we were able to sponsor 2 young Kiwi women to go. And believe it or not, one of them just turned 19. She's really incredible. The other one is much older. I think she's 22 or 23. And it's really amazing what they do. We're doing a lot with young entrepreneurs, but we're still continuing the programs that we're doing at all the different universities. We started a mentoring program with Fulbright, where we have 20 young people that are working with 20 mentors that we're helping to fund do. So we're going to continue to do that. We're working with Fulbright, Eisenhower, and so on, and we will continue doing all those things because it really is important. Well, first of all, thank you for the question. But you stated as we were the defending champions. Most people don't know that the last time the rugby was played in the Olympics, the U.S. won. Matter of fact, we're the only team that's ever won in the Olympics in 1920 and 1924. We beat France both times. But fortunately, it's the rugby sevens where we have a chance because it's a speed game, very different than going to see the All Blacks play, where they beat us by a few points when they came up to play us at Soldier Field in Chicago. But I think we actually do have a good chance. We have one of the fastest players that will play in the rugby, and I think we'll do pretty well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everybody.